The Cree, People of the Land, a presentation by James Arliss and Ben Stryker. The Cree Nation lived all across Canada and the northern part of the United States. They were contained by the lakes and rivers draining into eastern James Bay and the southeastern Hudson Bay. Their lands are rich in fish and birds and big game and fur-bearing animals. In the early 17th century, French explorers encountered the Cree. Several years later, the Hudson's Bay Company is incorporated. From the beginning, the Cree are closely related with the company. As hunters and prime suppliers of pelts, the Cree are drawn into the fur trade with the French and the English. In the 1960s, Quebec begins the process of a mass resource extraction. Consequently, the James Bay Cree are continually uprooted. In 1971, the Quebec government announces plans for the James Bay project in northern Quebec. The massive hydropower development plans to build a series of dams, reservoirs, and power stations on the Grand River. The Cree, fearing the project will destroy their way of life and damage the environment, lobby against the project. In 1974, in response to the James Bay project, the Grand Council of Crees is formed, representing 9 different communities of Crees. The purpose is to protect their rights during negotiations with the Canadian government. This will be the official channel of Cree communications. On November 11, 1975, the federal government, the Quebec provincial government, and the representatives from each of the James Bay Cree communities signed the first of the modern treaties, the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement. Under the agreement, the Cree receive $225 million in compensation and give up their claim to certain land in northern Quebec, pictured here. As part of the agreement, the Cree communities also gain special hunting and fishing rights and more opportunity for self-government. In 1986, the Quebec government announces plans for the Great Whale Project, which would dam and divert 5 rivers that flow into Hudson Bay and flood over 3,500 square kilometers of Cree treaty land along the Great Whale River in northern Quebec. The James Bay Cree joined environmental groups to launch a highly publicized campaign to stop the project. In 1994, due in part to the Cree's efforts, the Quebec government cancels the Great Whale Project. In 2002, the Cree and the government of Quebec signed the landmark Agreement Concerning a New Relationship. This agreement allows for continued hydroelectric development in exchange for Cree employment in the hydroelectric industry and $3.5 billion in financing over 50 years. In Cree communities, the agreement means development through the expansion of infrastructure, including housing, community centers, health services, and expanded opportunities in education. Far more than an economic deal, this is seen as a nation-to-nation agreement. Overall, the Cree's interaction with white men has been peaceful and effective. In the 1600s, Cree benefited through trade with the French and the English. When resources were discovered in Quebec, the government forced the Cree off the land they had held for hundreds of years. This was just the beginning of the Cree's continued battle with the government of Quebec over the land. Through the years, Quebec proposed several different energy-creating plans, all obstructive to the Cree's way of life. In the end, an agreement was forged between these two nations, resulting with the Cree receiving money and jobs, hopefully resolving issues between them forever. Through the years, Indians have rarely had a good relationship with the government. The Cree provide an interesting situation. While they were forced off their lands and had to stand up for themselves, they went through it coming out better off and never having to resort to violence. This can be attributed to the organization of the Cree. They prove that by sticking together, Indians do not always have to suffer, and the government cannot always mistreat Native Americans.